Alright, so now what we're going to do is start our sculpting and that business. So I'm going to switch to my sculpt tools. And then, oops, didn't mean to do that. Oh, cancel. Okay. Switch to my sculpt and make sure I'm on layers and make sure I'm on my sculpt layers. Okay. So the way this is going to work is basically like this. That if I hit W, I can see the wireframe. Basically what you want to do is you want to subdivide this. So right now, if I were to use this sculpt, and it's B for brush size and M for strength, let's see, regular old sculpt here. Okay, well, it's getting wonky. I got to change my strength down. There we go. It's going to pull it out, but you can see I can't get any kind of detail here. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go through and, if I'm going to make any big adjustments, I'll do that now. But I already kind of, modeled it kind of the way that I wanted it. So I'm just going to leave that the way it is. So what I want to do is subdivide it. Okay. So to subdivide, you can hit Shift D. That will subdivide, or you go to Mesh, Add New Subdivision Level. Oops. Mesh, Add New Subdivision Level. Okay. And now we're in level 1. Then we're up to 2040, and that will sculpt. That will bring it out a little bit. Now, if I do it again, let's say Shift D, you can see again it subdivided it. Now, once you've made those subdivisions, to go up and down, it's page down and page up. That will move up and down your subdivisions. Okay. Now, what you don't want to do is sculpt directly on this, because what happens is that you can do that, and that's fine, but it doesn't really leave you a lot of flexibility. What you can actually do is, I'm going to go ahead and do it on the second subdivision level. You can make a layer. So I'm going to make a layer, and we'll just call this adjustment. Okay. And now once I start sculpting on this, so I can go ahead and make some adjustments here. It's a little bit strong, so I'm just going to hold Shift and smooth that out. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Let's make that a little bit down. And I'm going to use my tablet here, and I'll hold Shift, right? And I can kind of start, Control is inwards, and Shift is smoothing, okay? In case you were not sure of that. So I can do some sculpting here, right? And then I can, oops, thought I was holding Shift, okay? I can do something like that, all right? Why doesn't seem like missing my middle mouse button on my thing there? Okay, so what's nice is when I use layers, watch this. If I hit the little eyeball, it goes away. So if I don't like something I do on that layer, I can go ahead and just get rid of it. I can also adjust the strength of it. I could take it and, like opacity, put it on or off, right? Now it looks like it's bulging, okay? So there's a nicety there where it basically allows you to kind of work in a lossless sort of way. Otherwise, if I went directly on the mesh and just sculpt it from where we were at, the only way to undo what I did would be to basically just undo everything, like just Control Z all the way back. So this allows me, I can make multiple layers and work on those, and maybe have different variations using that. Now the layers are tied to the subdivision level. So you see next to this L for level, there's a 2. So if I hit page down, you're going to see it's going to turn into a no smoking. Okay? So now, if I try to sculpt in here, I can't sculpt on that. Now I could click on the mesh and sculpt on it, but again, I don't want to do that. So I can't sculpt on it. That's locked to that specific subdivision level. Alright? So what I'm going to do is just, I'm just going to basically, actually, I got to switch my settings real quick. I'm going to pause it so I can switch my Wacom settings. And then we're just going to sculpt this adjustments first. So let's make sure. Good. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do basic kind of adjustments here, where I'm just trying to, make some minor little things here to just, add a little more angularness to it. So we'll just Control to go inwards there instead. And then we'll just add like a little bit of a knobby here because that branch is coming out right there. And I'm just going to hold Shift. So there we go, like that. right? So there's a lot of irregularities, and depending on the type of tree you're making, I probably should have had more of a reference here for this. You know, you might have more twists or, you know, things like that, but I'm just going to kind of just put a little bit this way, right? And then I like to basically use that tool and then the grab. I find that those are really kind of the two that do most of my the work that I need to do. Let's go ahead and pull you down a little. Got a little bit of a thing there. All right. And then so it's just B for the size. Right, and just gonna basically make the adjustments. That poor guy, clearly compensating. So let's go back. I'm gonna hit 1 and sculpt a little bit there, and then whenever you draw a stroke, like if I draw a stroke like this, afterwards you should hit smooth. Just hold Shift and smooth it out. You're gonna get the best results that way. Because it's not going to be as apparent right now because we're making kind of bigger, more gross kind of motions and such. But you'll notice it when we start doing the more detailed oriented stuff. Okay, so I don't want to spend all day and have you, you know, bored out of your mind. So I'm just going to call that kind of good. Well, that looks fine. Okay, so I had a little bit of sculpting, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit Shift D, or again, I can go up there and hit it. So I'll hit Shift D. And we'll do Shift D again. And then I'm just going to go ahead and make another layer. And I'll just call this like, we'll call it Wrinkles. Wrinkles. Okay. And this one, I'm going to hit W to get rid of the wireframe because I don't really need that. So on this one, I'm just going to go ahead and... Oops, not that, sorry. Get used to... and basically add sort of my more or less kind of knots and things like that. Right, so let's have that kind of come up and around, and let's hold Shift afterwards. So make sure you hold Shift, kind of smooth that out. Right, so you can kind of see, make sure these are connected. So I'm just trying to basically add a little bit of, I'm just going to add kind of a knot there, kind of a thing. Like maybe there was a branch there and now it's not. I'm going to hold Control and kind of cut that in a little bit. Right. Honestly, it's pretty forgiving as a whole when you're doing this stuff. Okay, so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm doing here. So let's make this a little bit bigger. Right, so I'm just going to kind of smooth it. I'm trying to make this as organic and as possible. So notice I drew a stroke, and then when I get to the end here, I try to let go. If you have a Wacom or some sort of tablet that has pressure sensitivity, that definitely helps. And then when I get to the end here, I smooth it into it. See what I'm saying? So otherwise I end up with like a notchy looking thing. So I'm just going to kind of go like that. And that will be a little bit better. So I'm looking right here and see like this is just going shoo, right? That doesn't look that good. I need to break it up a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and add, you know, some of this here to kind of break out that stump, right? And then I'm just hitting smooth after, right? And then I can make this a little bit smaller and hold Control. And now notice that, let's undo that. Let's undo it again. I need it to be more of a harsher cut in, right? So what I can do is go to my fall off and then use this. This is like a sharp. And now when I hold Control and cut in, it'll be a sharper kind of cut in there. So I'm going to kind of cut this across, and then I'll smooth on the one side a little bit. And that will give me a little bit more, you know, detail and texture like that. Okay? So then I'm just going to go back to the regular flavor here. I think that's the one it was. And then, you know, oops, let's make that a little bit bigger. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of right? Smooth that out. Smooth that out. Kind of have that go up into the tree. So I would highly suggest having, you know, some sort of reference that you're working from in particular. Because that's definitely going to give it more of a realistic kind of look here. So I kind of cut that in a little bit. Okay. So, obviously this is not my area of expertise. But maybe try to draw this across here. Well, I'm not going to go through and do the whole thing, but I think you probably get a good idea. So I would do that, right? And kind of do the whole ding dong ding to the fring frang. Got that going. Smooth that out a little bit. All right. So now what I'm going to do is sort of the next level of sculpting. And that's just going to be to create the texture. So I'm just going to again hit Shift D. And I'm hit W. And I'm on the top here, you're going to notice it's going to tell me what my size is. Now mind you, every time you go up a subdivision level, it's going to be exponential, right? Because look it. If I have these little squares, it's not going to be twice as much as this. It's going to be 4 times as much. And then the one on top of that is going to be 4 times as much as that one. So the first couple, your computer won't have a lot of problems with, but usually I find around 6 or 7, your computers will start to chug, okay? So I'm going to hit Shift D again, and let's see how it does. So you can see it's already chugging. I'm moving my mouse around. You can see down here it's actually saying unmapping. There we go. And let's see. So we're at level 6 now. Come on. That's W. Why is it not rotating? That's weird. Okay. Let me see. Some reason I'm stuck on this view here. Let's make a new layer, and we'll just call this texture. Okay. And it appears that I am stuck on a orthographic view. I'm not sure how that happened, but let's just look through this. I don't know. I must have hit a button or something. I'm not sure. Okay. So, okay, let's hit W again. Let's see where we're at. That might be high enough res. So you won't know until you try to do it. So we can do this a couple different ways. We can either try to use stencils, or we can try to use stamps. Okay. It depends on the kind of thing you're doing. Some things stamps work better when you're trying to just scratch on details. If you're trying to get a general texture, I would say usually stencils work a little bit better. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on these and see if I find one that I think would work well. So looking at this kind of looks like a tree trunk. I'm going to go ahead and use this one. This looks okay. So what I'm going to do is, I think it's S, right? Yeah. So you hold S, and then S and left, right, and middle. So S middle will move, just like that would move your camera. Right will zoom it in and out, like you would zoom in and out in your camera. And then left click is rotate. Okay. Now we can also, there's an option here to use tiles, which means it will repeat the shape. Otherwise, what will end up happening if you don't use tiles is this. So let me move this down. Let me see, S, move it down. Watch when I sculpt on this now. It's a little bigger. See how it cuts in right there? That's not real great for me. So I'm going to undo that. So I like to click on the use tiles. If it doesn't show up here, just click back on it again. It should show up there, because if I switch another tool or something, it's not going to show up there. Now, there are other tools here you can try to play around with, but quite frankly, the only ones I really use are Sculpt and Grab. I don't find other ones to honestly be that much use to me, because they're kind of just the same thing. Knife probably would have been useful earlier. Anyways, I'm going to try and use this this one here, and I'm just going to try and basically sculpt it on there. So what I would suggest is click back on the Sculpt, and now you'll see that tool will show up. Let's see. Alright, and okay, so let me see if there's any settings here that I need to play around with. Curve. Nah, I don't really care about any of that. Okay, let me see, my fall off is back to normal. That's good. We're not using a stamp, we're using that. Okay, so take your strength though and make it really light, because you don't really need that much strength for this, because we're just trying to basically get this texture on there a little bit. And this might not look good, we'll find out in a second. So I'm just going to kind of brush like this, and then I'm just going to hit Q to turn it off, and then I'm just going to take a look. And honestly, I don't really like it. I don't think it looks that good. So I'm going to undo that. Hit Q to turn it back on, and I'm going to see if I can find a better one. So let's look over here. That's probably not going to work. That's definitely not going to work. Let's see. What's this one? That might work. Let me see. What's this? This is actually a tree trunk. That one might work. Let's use that one. I think that's probably going to work pretty well for us. Okay. So now with that selected, I'm just going to go ahead and try to brush through now. And that's a little bit better. Okay. And I'm just going to kind of move down here. And I'm also going to hold S and, S and middle. There we go. Just because I don't want the pattern to be the same. And we'll kind of sculpt it down into this. Right. And then I need to rotate this guy around over here. And we're just going to kind of go like that. Try not to get too close to the edges, because what you're going to notice, I'm going to hit Q to turn it off, is that when it gets to the edges, because it's projecting across, you're going to get this, like, it's going to be stretched. So you got to kind of just do what's right in front of you. So we're just going to go ahead. Oops, got to turn it back on. And we're just going to go whoop. Okay. All right. Good. And let's go up here. Good. Right. And let's rotate this around here. And I'm just going to move my model across this area so that I can use it to more or less sculpt in different places. Because obviously I don't want to have too much repeating. So since it's kind of rotating it around to the different areas anyway, I'll just kind of take advantage of that. And then we'll just go ahead and... Alright. And let's move this over this way now. Alright. And let's see what we got to do over here. Missed a little spot right there. Okay. And let's hit Q. See, turn that off. Oops, missed one there. Let's see. So, okay, Q. All right. So you can see I got kind of a texture going on there. That's not too awful bad. Do a better job than I did, because obviously I missed a bunch of spots and things like that. But that is more or less the stencil, right? So that's pretty useful. It's pretty cool. I'm going to turn that off, so just click on off. Now I'm going to go to the stamp. And basically stamp kind of works like the stencil, but a little bit differently. And I'm just going to use some of my favorite ones here. So let me see, not that one. I'm just going to go ahead and use this guy here. This is good for creating like scratches and stuff. So I'm going to go over here and just so you get an idea of how this thing works. And I'm going to hold... let's make this a little bit smaller. Let's make it a little bit stronger. And I'm going to hold Control, and you can kind of see how it's doing the scratches. So that's what I'm going to do. And let's actually make it a little bit weaker and a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to kind of add a little bit of wear and tear, if you will. So this is really good for like underneath skin and stuff, like where there's skin wrinkles and things, like underneath the neck, things like that. So I'm just kind of trying to basically detail out some of my areas here. Okay, so a really big thing that you really want to do when you're texturing is you're trying to constantly avoid like repeating patterns and stuff, because we use so much repeating patterns. It's really obvious. So if you can do anything to kind of break up the space, that was a little strong, it's definitely going to, you know, help the look of it. So I don't want to spend all day on this, but you get the idea. So that will, you can kind of add things like that. And you can play around with these, and you can also just go grab some. Go on the internet, look up alphas whatever you're looking for. You know what I mean? Just type in something and then alpha, and then you'll probably come up with something that would work for you. Okay, so that looks, we're going to say acceptable, because I'd like to show you some other stuff. Okay, so yeah, we'll call that good. Let me see, actually. Let me just double check. So sculpt, we did this. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do these rocks real quick, and then we'll go from there. So to do the rocks, I believe I can actually just start sculpting on them, right? Yeah. So if you click on a rock, it'll automatically, see how now it's this mesh 2? Now watch when I click on this. Switches that mesh. This is actually kind of nice because it doesn't get all messed up from being, you don't have to like select it and go through the whole thing. So I like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to Shift D. Yeah, we'll just do that. And then I'm just going to kind of, we'll go ahead and make a layer. And I'll just put this as, oh, I thought I was in it. There we go. Adjustment. Boom. And let's go to the rocks here. And we're just going to kind of do some sculpting. So let's see. Let's hit W. And, oh, I still have the stamp on. So I just want to kind of, what I'm looking to do is basically try to just make it more angular. So it's a little bit more rocky, if you will. A little more Balboa. So I'm just kind of looking to add some areas here where that would be a little bit more obvious. So, you know, so what I'm doing is I'm trying to draw a lot in one area, and then I just hold Shift on the side area. And then what that does is it creates like a smooth spot and then a hard spot. And then to further kind of push that, if I go to pinch, I can kind of, let me hit W so I can see what I'm doing here. I can kind of pinch some of these corners. All right, so let me put that back on so you can see. It's going to pinch the corners. It's going to give me a harder edge, right, which is kind of what I'm after. So I can make it a little bit more angular here. Because I want it to be a little bit sharper. So, and then just keep brushing back and forth until I get, and then I'm just going to hold Shift to smooth in between. Come on, get in there. Good. Okay. So we're going to say those are rocks. They're not that great, but you get the idea. Okay. So now I'm going to do is Shift D. Back on here. Sorry, Shift D. Shift D. I don't really need any of that other adjustment stuff. So I'm just going to keep going until we get, I'm on this guy. I think because I'm hovered over that one, they're like, all right, so we'll say 6 is good. I'll make a new layer, and we're just going to call this one texture. Sorry, I'm trying to do this as quick as possible so you're not watching like a million minute video. All right, so I'm going to go back to Sculpt again. I'm not going to use a stencil. I do like the stencils, and honestly, I probably would use that on here, but I just want to show you one other thing you can kind of do that's useful with the stamp here. So if you go to the stamp, and then I'm just going to look for something that looks like a rock. Let's see. Okay, we'll use this one. This is fine. It's not going to look that great, but so by default, what we were using before, it worked fine for these, create those scratches. But you'll notice it looks like a crappy pattern, right? Because it is a crappy pattern. So what we can do, though, is we can fix that a little bit. So what we do is use stamp image. That's fine. Then we can click on randomize. And what that's going to do is it's going to randomly rotate a certain amount, jitter it left and right, up and down, change the scale. Well, currently it's not doing that. Let's do a little bit of scale, too, just to kind of throw it. And I think this must be opacity. Stamp strength, yeah. So opacity. I don't know what stamp offset is. That's new. What is this one? Oh, I don't care about that either. Now, the other thing I want to do is stamp spacing. Okay, by default we have spacing, and that just means that every time I draw the stroke, the farther this goes out, let's go pretty far out, the farther it takes between, let me go more so you can see it more obviously. Let's go like this. When I click and draw, it's going to draw one, then another. See how it's like taking forever? It's not drawing a bunch of them. But if I do new stamp spacing, it'll just draw like a straight, it'll go straight from one to the next, okay? So it's a good idea when you're trying to do something where you're just kind of drawing the pattern onto it. What you want to do is have the spacing roughly the distance, the size of the brush itself, so there's not a bunch of overlapping. Because if I draw on top of myself, it gets kind of busy. So what I'm going to do is just do, I guess, 100%. And then that should, space it out enough that I can basically draw my pattern. So this is really useful for all sorts of things. Man, I really don't like this, but I'm just going to cut that in a little. So it's a little too patterny, if you will. Like, I think a stencil would look better, but I just wanted to show you. That's really good for, like, if you're trying to create, like, a skin texture or something like that. You can put that little stamping on there. Let's see, do they have... So, like, you know, that looks better than if instead I didn't have randomize on there and I didn't have stamp spacing. It's going to look like this, right? And that looks not great. So, yeah, anyway, that's kind of something you probably want to do. Let's see, and let's still use randomize here. I think these are just not, let's shift D this one more time. I think this is just not high enough resolution. Oh, crap, I put it on that layer. Okay, I'll make a new layer. So I'm just going to do this one with this texture. So these would be two different. I don't really care that much. So I'm just going to texture, actually like this texture a little bit better than the other one. I'm also holding control and cutting in instead. And I'm just going to, smooth doesn't help. Undo that. Undo. There we go. And that looks ugly, but we're going to call that good. Okay. So that is a real rough how to sculpt in there, but honestly what I would suggest doing is playing around with it. There's all these other tools in here. You can try playing with them. Try playing with the different stencils. You can bring some in if you want as well. So to bring them in, all you got to do is, like for the stencil, for instance, I would find a picture that I liked. So let's say I liked rock, like I like this rock texture. So I could open this up, right? It'd be better to take your own picture so you're not stealing stuff. It's also better if you get, oh man, what are you going to try and make me buy it or something? Let's, where are you? Save image as. I could save this image and, not to still life. Need it to be to the hill thing. Where are you, hill? Hilltop, hilltop. I really got to clean up my area here. Hill, there we go. Save it to maybe to my source images, and we'll just call it like rock texture, right? So I save a picture that I like, go over to the stencil here, click on this, we can add a stencil, and then I can just go to that picture, and once again, go hunting for my, hey, I found it quick that time. Boom, and select that, and now that will be one of the stencils, and I can use that to sculpt with. See? And this looks nicer than the ones that are on there. Now this one's not seamless. See how there's these seams in here? So you could either try to find one that's seamless, or you can make one that's seamless using that same process we did with the offset and all that other business. So you can do that. You can also do that with your stamp. You would just kind of do the same thing, but instead of looking up rock texture, look up like rock alpha brush, we'll say, and go to images, and then you're just going to look for this. Okay, and that way, basically these images, you want something that's like a black and white image that you can use. Okay, so I would highly, Q, come on, there we go. Okay, so I highly suggest doing that. It's gonna look more custom because when you use the brushes that are in there, you're like, oh, I know that brush. Anyway, so we're gonna call that good on the sculpting of this tree and these rocks, but like I would spend more time on yours and try to make it look nice and play and explore. But in the next one we'll do is we'll actually start texturing it and probably bake the results. All right, go team.